Ryan Abraham, who is the beat reporter there, also the owner and publisher of USC Football. Ryan Abraham, welcome to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on to talk about this classic game.
Oh, it's a lot of fun, and we have enjoyed featuring the former players. We had Sam Bam Cunningham on. I mean, we've enjoyed talking about this. It gives us a lot to look forward to, rather than a mid-major team throwing them on the schedule the first lineup.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's a classic matchup. I mean, probably two of the top 5 all-time college football programs, and a lot of times Alabama, they're a team that recruits 5-star guys all the time. You don't get to play a lot of teams that do that a lot. And USC is one of those teams. They're just coming off the sanctions, so the roster is maybe not as full as it's been before, but there's a lot of 5-star talent on the roster. So there's going to be some talent on the other side of the line from playing Alabama on this one.
Yeah, and let's start with probably one of the most talented units when we talk about the offensive line. I saw the other day on a Pro Football Focus, I think it was, who listed offensive lines in college football. They've got one of the top offensive lines in the college football. Talk about that offensive line and how big they are.
Yeah, it's a big guy. I mean, they start with Zach Banner, who he was representing USC at Pac-12 Media Day. He's actually the son of the All-American Lincoln Kennedy. He played at Washington, and he's 6'8" or 6'9" and 350 some pounds. He's probably one of the biggest men in college football, and they got a lot of veterans coming back. There's 16 scholarship guys on the offensive line. The problem, though, I think last year they were very talented, too, and they underperformed. They've had 5 different offensive line coaches over the last 5 years. So they bring in Neil Callaway, hoping to bring some stability to that line. It's certainly very talented. They're very deep. And I think for this team to be successful when you're going to have a new quarterback, you want to be able to run the football. They got some good running backs, but that offensive line is going to have to play well. So I think the expectations are high. It's certainly a talented line, but I wouldn't go out and crown them one of the best in the country yet. I'd have to prove it on the field before they do that.
But let's go to the other side. We talk about inside the trenches, and the defensive line seems to be maybe on the weaker side of that.
Yeah, certainly. They had all 3 defensive inside starters from last year are gone. Their top 5 defensive linemen are gone. So it's going to be a rebuilding process for the guys on the defensive line. They got some. There were some freshmen that played last year. They brought in a really good recruiting class. Back in 2015, a lot of those guys got to play, but they weren't the starters. Now they're going to be thrust into the limelight. And they had a former 5-star, Kenny Bigelow, who was supposed to be the veteran returning on the team. He ended up blowing out his knee. So they're going to rely on a bunch of young guys. They got a transfer, Joshua Fatu, and then Utah's defensive tackle transferred as a graduate transfer. He's going to be a senior. So they brought in some veteran help, but certainly the core of that defensive line is going to be a lot of young guys, a bunch of sophomores, and they're really going to rely on them to play well this season. It's not going to be easy out of the gate because you got Alabama, like we said, but they have Stanford and Utah soon after that. So it's going to be a kind of a trial by fire for this young defensive line.
I want to talk about the Olympic athlete as far as Olympic speed, Adoree Jackson. How many ways are they going to use this young man to try to get the football in his hands?
Yeah, he's kind of a freak, and he went down and tried out for the Olympics and the triple jump, and didn't quite make it, but he made a real run at it. He did a lot of track in the springs. We haven't really seen him playing football since the bowl game. He hasn't been around all that much because he was focusing on track, but he had a hard time kind of losing the weight. He was still about 180 pounds, and I think he's going to try to get up to 190 before the season. But he's going to be featured at cornerback. I think that's what his position is going to be when he moves on to the NFL, probably after this season. I think they might curb some of what he was doing before because he was doing so much. He'll still get some offensive touches. They can line up in the slot, hand him the ball off from the backfield. He could play outside. But I think he's going to focus more on cornerback and then returning punts. They might let some of the other guys return kickoffs and stuff. He was playing almost every snap, and I think it kind of wore on him. And I think his cornerback play fell off a little bit as a sophomore as opposed to his freshman year. So I think they really want him to be out there, be aggressive, playing on an island on this defense. So they might try to limit his outside of cornerback touches this year compared to last year.
I look at this game, and I think early on, and I've been pretty honest with my audience here, I think Alabama's going to struggle to score points early on. I think their defense is going to be pretty nasty. But I look at USC's offense. When you return 10, do I have this right, 10 starters on the offensive side of the football?
There are a lot of guys coming back. And a lot of guys with experience playing. A whole bunch of guys on the offensive line. They used different guys. They were down to their 4th-string center last year, but all of them seem to come in and play well. And the guy that was a 4th-string, Nico Fala, he might end up being the starter this year. So they have a lot of dudes with experience on the offensive line. 2 really good running backs coming back. Justin Davis is a senior, And Ronald Jones is just a speedster. He's more Reggie Bush-like than probably anyone USC's had since Reggie Bush was around. He's a sophomore. So I think those two guys and a real big host of wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster's the star. They need someone to be the Batman to his Robin. He didn't really have one last year, but it's a really deep group. They got 12 scholarship wide receivers, so it's kind of crazy the amount of receivers they have, and a bunch of seniors. There's some transfers in there, so we'll see who kind of steps up there. But it's really a talented offensive unit. Of course, you don't know who the signal caller is going to be yet, who can make the whole thing go. But otherwise, outside of that, it's really an experienced group.
When it's all said and done, who do you think is going to win this quarterback job there at USC?
I think it's going to be Max Brown, but the fact that Clay Helton hasn't named him yet, and Max Brown's the redshirt junior who's already graduated. He was a 5-star, top drop-back quarterback in the country, according to Scout, when he came out of high school. And a lot of the guys from his recruiting class have already moved on to the NFL, and he hasn't even started a game yet. So he really wants this job. Of course, he would have 2 years left to start. If they name Sam Darnold the starter, and Clay Helton said he was going to wait 2 weeks in the fall camp to do that, Sam Darnold's a redshirt freshman from Orange County out here in Southern California. Max Brown would be free to leave, and because he could be a graduate transfer and go play 2 years somewhere else. Now, it would be in the middle of August, and it would be kind of difficult to do that. But, theoretically, Alabama hasn't named a starting quarterback. He could transfer and go play for Lane Kiffin and start against USC if he wasn't named the starter. So it's kind of crazy the situation that could happen if they don't name Max Brown the starter. I kind of think they will, but Sam Darnold there's a lot of groundswell support for him, and a lot of the coaches really like him. He's more of an athletic guy, and you want to talk about beating Nick Saban in Alabama. Most of the time, if you're able to, that rare victory against them, it's going to be something where you have an athletic quarterback, and Max Brown isn't that guy. Sam Darnold would be.
We are talking to Ryan Abraham right now, Inside Troy on the Twitter account, at Inside Troy, if you want to stay on the latest as far as USC football. USCfootball.com is the website as we're talking about the Trojans, as we're counting down the hours, 892 hours from Alabama and Southern California. But going to Sam Darnold, is he a guy that is more of a mobile quarterback? He can extend the play?
Yeah, certainly he is. And they're not going to change the offense all that much if they name him the starter, but it would be more of the play breaks down. He's a guy that can take off and run. I got to see a bunch of his high school games, and he ran a lot. And so when you see a guy like that just runs a lot, you're like, oh, he probably can't throw the football. But that's what's really been impressive is his arm strength, his accuracy, what he's been able to do. He can throw, and you put him next to Max Brown, and there's a lot of similarities there. But the fact that he has that extra dimension in his game. So he's more of a passing quarterback that can run. He's a drop-back quarterback that can take off and run. I know they used him a lot in high school in those situations. I don't think they put him in the kind of, read option sort of spread thing that some of the other coaches have tried to do, but it would just be more for the play breaks down. He can he can pick up that first down with his legs. So that's kind of the extra dimension that he adds. But because his arm strength and his accuracy and his presence in the pocket has been so impressive, that's why it's been a quarterback battle.
I'm just curious from a USC fan perspective, and I know you talk to a lot of fans, interact with them on the Twitter, on the website as well. What are their thoughts about going back up against Lane Kiffin? Is there a little revenge there?
There's not a whole lot of that. There's kind of a sub. The biggest thing is playing Alabama. Everyone that we talk to, all the USC fans, certainly it's the Alabama game. The Lane Kiffin thing is sort of like a side note, but it's an interesting one. And what is it going to be? There was a lot of complaints about how Lane Kiffin ran his offense and things like that. And so it's kind of like, well, now you got a chance to face him. Obviously, he's running a really talented squad. And you just see in the championship game last year when we would talk to USC fans, they're like, look, they don't use a tight end all year, and then the championship game he goes crazy. And that's the kind of thing that would frustrate USC fans all the time. And he would always seem to be like saving something or trying to outsmart anybody. So it's kind of like a little sidebar more, but the real big thing is just obviously the classic matchup with Alabama.
I'm just curious, from someone who's covered USC football and understanding Lane Kiffin, what are your thoughts about what he's accomplished here in Tuscaloosa?
I never thought he's always been great to me. He's been he would never turn you down for an interview. He just wasn't the most energetic guy, he wasn't the gregarious dude, and that's just kind of his personality. That's the way he was. But he would never stop you from doing your job. He would he would come on my podcast or whatever. We'd do interviews, all that kind of stuff. I just didn't think he was going to be there all that long with Nick Saban being such a strong personality, and Lane Kiffin being used to running the show is really going to have to be basically doing whatever Nick Saban says. But it's worked out really well, obviously, making them run a championship one year and winning it the next. And I just didn't think it would last that long. But it's really, I think, helped him kind of rebuild his career. And I think it would give him an opportunity, especially after this season, if Alabama makes another run, to get a better head coaching job. Like maybe he could have got, a lower job, and he didn't really want that, but maybe 3 years under Nick Saban and all the success he's had, it might say some athletic director, hey, you know what, we should take a chance on Lane Kiffin too. So I think it's been great for him. A lot of the decisions he makes seem to work out really well, and I didn't think he'd stick around this long, but it's obviously worked out great.
So what's the game come down to in your opinion?
I think, like you said before, I don't know if there's going to be a ton of points being scored. Both teams, when you're starting a new quarterback, you might be a little bit more conservative. I think Alabama is going to be able to run the football, especially if that USC defensive front isn't going to be as stout, because they lost all those guys. So I kind of think, I think Alabama will probably win by like 7 to 10 points, something like that, just because it's not going to be, in my opinion, like some great offensive showcase. It'll probably be a little bit more conservative. I think the USC defense is going to be a lot more aggressive than they have been in the past, but Lane Kiffin knows Clancy Pendergast because he hired him, the new USC defensive coordinator. So there'll be some chess and stuff kind of going on, but I think they'll just be, it's not quite a well-oiled machine on both sides quite yet, so you don't see as many points, but Alabama just probably, just a better system overall. They've been running, and USC's doing this, really a lot of this stuff for the first time with a brand-new head coach. So I think system-wise, you have to certainly give the edge to Alabama. And if it's a slobber knocker kind of game, then Alabama would win it.
What is reasonable expectations for a win-loss total there for the Trojans in the 12 regular season games? I know it's a very difficult schedule.
It is. It's a very difficult schedule. It's a difficult question. People ask me this a lot, and you think about it. I talk to a lot of people around the program, and some think 8-4 would be great, and some think you got to win at least 9. But this is a team that swept the Pac-12 South last year and went to the championship game, getting beat by Stanford. But their expectations are still high. It's a really talented team, and even though this is going to be Clay Helton's first real go-around with his off-season and his workouts and all that kind of stuff, it's still, this team does have a lot of talent. They're leaving the sanctions in the rearview mirror, and people want them to win. But coming out of the gate with Alabama and Utah State and Stanford and Utah, like back-to-back on the road, 6 games apart, they could be 1-3 and still playing pretty good, but just lose those games. So win total, I think 8 is probably good, but I know a lot of the fans kind of expect more than that. But this first one could be a real telltale sign for the rest of the season. If it is a blowout, if it is like a crazy blowout sort of game, I don't know what that's going to do to this team's psyche. If they lose a close one, it might be a moral victory going forward and give you a better chance against Stanford and Utah. So it's going to be a strange season, right? We're just not really sure what's going to happen, but I think 9 wins or above, I think it would be a pretty good one.
All right, so just a final question, and we're no doubt looking forward to this game, but you also covered the LA Rams and that transition there. Talk about the fans and how excited they are to have football back in LA. Yeah,
that's pretty crazy. And, Los Angeles is a really pro town, and so people in Tuscaloosa might, be shocked that not everyone's talking about USC Alabama, but more people are talking about the Rams and like playing the Cowboys in a preseason game. There's a lot of excitement for the NFL coming back to Los Angeles. It's been 21 years or whatever, and they sold out their season tickets. Actually, this morning they put single game tickets on sale, and just so much popularity. But I think a lot of it's going to be because this is year one. The popularity is there. It's kind of like a new restaurant opening. Everyone wants to go. After a while, if it's not that good, are people going to still show up there? And the LA fan base can be very fickle. So if the Rams finish 8-8 or 7-9, Jeff Fisher could be on the hot seat, and you're not really sure what's going to happen here. But this first year, it's kind of gangbusters. So there's all the media's covering it. Like USC's beat writer from the LA Times, longtime beat writer Gary Klein, was moved over from the Times from USC to the Rams, and you're seeing that happen a lot, where the best people, the best media people, are moving over and covering the Rams just because it's such a big deal in LA. Now, it might not be that way for a couple of years from now, but at least right now, it's just been a whirlwind of excitement around here.
Absolutely. Ron Abraham, thank you again for jumping on and talking about this big game. Maybe we can try to connect with you maybe the week out. But when does practice start out there?
Yeah, a week from today. It's August 4th. So fall camp gets going, and a couple of days without pads, and then they'll be rolling. So it'll be really interesting. Your life changes, if you cover college football. Once August starts and fall camp starts, you pretty much are down there every day.
Yeah, I saw where you guys were allowed to stay in practice until the 21st. I think you're able to stay in the I think they're opening up to the fans. Did I read that correctly? That USC's opening up to the fans all the way until the 21st? Is that right?
Yeah, they do. They usually open up in the spring. Pete Carroll had them open up all the time, even during game weeks, and they've kind of got away from that during the sanctions. They certainly got away from that. But we're allowed to even cover the summer workouts 7-on-7, so we get to see these guys, the new freshmen, come in and develop and do interviews. So it's a pretty open.
Wow.
Because it's Los Angeles, you compete for media, you compete for headlines and all that kind of stuff. They have to kind of keep it more open. UCLA, very similar too. So they don't close it up and button it down. They allow the media to come out there and talk to guys and cover it.